Hi guys, it's Kelly here, back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be combining some older products with some newer products and doing a shaped card with a bonus card that I didn't even know I was going to be making. So first I have the Vintage Mailbox. That's kind of the vector for which all of the cards will be made. I also have this cute little postcard from the new release, as well as the sentiments, which are the mailbox memos, and then this sweet little one to decorate the postcard. And then my older products are my Lovely Layers Magnolia and the Spring Birds and Spring Greenery. So here, you can do gold accents if you don't want to do any like additional coloring or anything like that. You can use a gold mirror cardstock for your accents, but I chose to go with like a goldenrod colored cardstock, just so that way I could add my own coloring and dimension. The base of our card is going to be black, and we're actually going to need 2 of those flat, like the back pieces, flat back pieces, and then 1 of the front. So here, this has such really great like detail that's just like embosses into the cardstock, and I really wanted to highlight that. So I'm actually inking up my die with my Honeybee Metallic Gold pigment ink. I'm inking it up just like I would a stamp, very, very carefully placing that down on my cardstock. This isn't watercolor cardstock, it's just regular black cardstock, and that is going to then, when it embosses the image into the cardstock, it will also press the ink in. And I really love the way that it turned out. It's obviously like a technique that you would use for more of, it's not going to be a perfect impression is what I'm trying to say. So more of like a vintage feel, where if there's a little bit of gold, you know, in other places, it's not going to be a huge deal. Doesn't it look super, super cool? They also have a detail layer that I did the same thing with. Now, this was my own fault because this was the first time I'm playing with it. So I'm just going to show you. In the actual front of the mailbox, there is a hinge door that you can open, but not if you cut through it, which is what I'm about to do right now. So I thought this wouldn't cut it out. And this is my, like I said, my own fault for not looking at the layering guide. I thought that it would just emboss the image in there with the gold, but it actually does cut. And so I ended up with 2 of these, which is how we were able to make that extra card. So it all ended up working out in the end. But that is originally how you're supposed to be able to open the card, is you will open that section and then your little handwritten message would be on the inside. I wanted to create mine as a full A2 shaped card. So I am going to go through, I'm going to do the post a second time. With doing it the way that I did it the first time, all of the gold around the edges is embossed there, but that would not be the case if you just used the die on its own, which you'll see here in a minute. So one of them has a really bold border of gold. This one is just going to have a thin border of gold and an open black border. So I guess it just depends on what kind of look you're going for. Like I said, I did end up using both of mine. And because we're using pigment ink, just FYI, you do want to give this time to dry. So you're not going to be, manipulating it right away. You want to give it time to dry. Here, I just have a spare piece of cardstock. This is how I'm going to create my secret hinge to open the door, but not, what is the word that I want? Not take away anything from the front. So I've just marked how tall that I need it to be. I just held it up against the side of the card, and then I'm just going to cut right by where my pencil line is. I chose to make my hinge about a 1/2 inch wide. You could make it larger. I didn't want a huge piece on the back that was going to be visible. That's why I chose to just go with the 1/2 inch. But then by the time we're done putting it together, like, you won't even be able to see the hinge. It won't interrupt the design on the front at all. So once I get my little 1/2 inch piece cut here, I'm just going to, you can use a scoreboard. I don't have one handy, I typically use just my paper trimmer. And then I'm using my bone folder from Honeybee to score just right down the middle, so at 1/4 of an inch. And then the trick to this, because it is thicker cardstock and it can be a little bit difficult to fold, is just kind of press gently until you get it to start folding. And then once you have it folded over completely, then you can go in with the back of the bone folder and just kind of burnish it down, and then it'll give you this little black hinge. Whatever color you've made your mailbox, that would be the color you would want to do it in so that it blends in pretty seamlessly. I've laid out all of my dies here. This is my postcard, my birds, my magnolias, my my spring greenery that's gonna help me kind of fill out my bouquet. The reason that I chose black for this is because I really thought like a pinkish white magnolia would really pop with the contrast. Turns out I was right. And so my initial instinct was to go with navy blue, but if you remember back at Christmas, I did a different postbox blue, and so I wanted to, I wanted the contrast, but I didn't want to have them all be blue, even though blue is my boyfriend. So here, this cute little postcard die is designed to kind of fit right in here. I'm just going to do just a couple of little things to make it look, a little aged, a little distressed, nothing too crazy. This is regular cardstock. It's not watercolor cardstock. So if you've ever stamped with distress inks, they don't stamp really that great. There's a lot of blotchiness because they are water-based, and which is kind of what I need. So I inked up just the florals of this bird cage with some picked raspberry. I inked up everything else, the script in the bird cage, with some hickory smoke. I stamped off once and then stamped onto my postcard. It was a little bit too light. The gray was anyway. So I went back in with the gray full strength. I just dabbed it off with a cloth, just again, so it didn't stamp perfectly. And then I'm going to use this, what does it say? It's something post. And a little stamp and a little hummingbird right over top of the cage. I'm going to stamp these in that gold pigment ink because I do want it to be complementary to the card design in which we are going to be using it in. And you could totally heat emboss these, with the pigment ink if you wanted. I didn't feel like it was necessary. I liked that the stamping was a little bit lighter. The gold is still very prevalent. It is obviously still metallic. It's just not as in your face as a heat embossing would be. I used another seal and like the little posted stamp, and I stamped these in the picked raspberry again. Used my rag to just kind of buff off some of the color so it didn't stamp perfectly. We are working on regular paper cardstock. Why can I not say that? So we don't want to add too much water. I just did a couple of droplets and then blotted that up. I'm also going to add a little bit of shading. This is still wet, so I'm going to be super gentle, but because I'm adding the ink while it's still wet, it's going to pick up differently on different areas and help kind of give it that more aged or worn look. You can see that right next to the bird cage. How it's just picking up different. In order to add a couple of little splashes, I'm just going to use a number 2 round brush and the same ink. I've just smushed it down on my desk, and then I'll just splatter some on in just some random areas. You're not even going to see very much of this, but this was the process that I went through, so I wanted to be able to show you that. Now we're going to move on to the coloring of these dies. If you have ever seen any of the videos I've done with the lovely layers, I have used the magnolias before. So this is going to be just a little bit sped up. This is already a really long video because we're making 2 cards with a lot of parts. So you can slow it down for sure, or you can see another video that maybe where, it's more slowed down closer to real time. But basically, I color all my lovely layers the same way. I always put down the layer that goes before it, trace that with my lightest ink color, and then add my shadows. In this, normally I would go around the edges as well, but in this case, I want my magnolia to look white at the edges, so there's no reason to go around the edges. I do always double check by putting the what are we calling that? The previous layer, by putting the previous layer back on top to make sure that all of the things that I needed are covered. And again, here I kind of lost myself for a minute because I'm used to just going over the whole line with my darkest color when I'm adding the shadows. But in this case, that is not necessary because it is going to fade to white, and we do want to make sure that we're leaving plenty of white. So one of the things that I do want to mention, if you are a big fan of Honeybee, if you are a fan of myself, I am actually going to be teaching a class in person on, when is it? March, I think it's 15th and 16th. I teach on Friday and Saturday. So I am teaching at Crop on the Cape. Now, Crop on the Cape is a full affair. It's like a full retreat function, but it's open to the public, and there are still slots available. So if you are local, or if you are a person who's within driving distance and you want to take the class, that is still open. There's still spots open. I actually have 2 classes. The one that I am teaching with Honeybee products actually does use the magnolia and does use the spring birds. We're just doing a different technique, still, including Copic coloring. And then the other one I'm doing is stenciling and Copic glazing. That one still has seats available, as well as I'm teaching 2 sessions of each class. So one of each class is already sold out. The other session is the one that still has them open. So if you're local, or if you're, looking, to take a day trip and you want to take a class, I would love to, you guys know, I'm super excited about being able to meet you guys in real life and to have conversations and to just kind of catch up. So the crop space that is, and like the swags and things like that are not available, but there's tons of classes to take. So even if you came for mine, but you wanted to sign up for other classes, you could make a whole weekend out of it. Really, truly, you could. So here, I just wanted to know that for the centers, I did go back and get the edges with that E99 so that when everything was put together, you wouldn't see any white edges. For this little bird, birds are challenging for me, because I'm always drawn to do them specific colors, but blue is my go-to color. Blue didn't fit with my color scheme this time around, guys. So I decided that I was going to do my little, I think it's a robin here, more of a golden brown. So I would just be mimicking the colors of the center of my magnolia. And then I would do his head and chest, that portion of it, a darker version of the magnolia. So really what the color scheme that I have chosen here is a bit more muted, is a bit more on the, kind of like romantic side. But it's like a yellow, pink, green combination, which is a really great triadic combination off the color wheel. And so I knew that they would work nicely together. The gold, the black are neutrals, and I tried very hard to leave other neutrals. So like the bird's belly, you'll see here in just a second, we're doing some warm gray colors, and the magnolia, the edges of it are that white. So I tried to stick to those repeating colors so that it would have a cohesiveness, so that the whole design would have a cohesiveness. But I was pleasantly surprised with the way that these turned out. You guys know that dyes are sometimes a struggle for me. And so I was really pretty happy with the way that the whole thing turned out. And added bonus, because the original idea that I had, I didn't love. I ended up with a second card that I will be able to use. If you're not a person who's into shaped cards, the second card may be an option for you. It's not quite as involved as a shaped card. So there is that as well. As far as, just general life goes, thank you guys so much for the well wishes. As the last time I talked to you, I told you my whole family was a little bit under the weather. Things are getting better. Everybody's kind of getting over it. Not 100%, but I don't feel bad. So I'm going to take that as the blessing that it is and move on with my life. I do feel there's so much happening, that I have to get done before I can go out of town. Not to mention the stuff I have to get done so I can go out of town. And I haven't really truly traveled in a long time. Partially due to the pandemic, partially due to my own anxiety. So it's going to be interesting. Pray for me, y'all. I need it. So let's talk about these little flowers. These are a great little way to add in another pop of color and round out a bouquet. These are part of the spring greenery. I also used 2 of the other leaves set from the spring greenery set. And I originally I like using a variation of greens, but I don't want to have 800 colors that I've pulled out marker-wise. And the same thing with the florals. So I wanted the florals to be similar, in the same kind of pink family, but not exactly the same. So I started by doing a purple base. Now I am using stippling to color these particular types of flowers, which is just a series of basically polka dots, just a series of dots to fill those in. But by giving it the purple base with the VO5 and the VO6, it changes the color up just enough that it doesn't look identical, but it is complementary. So that way you don't have to use, 102 different kinds of colors. We have a pinkish purple, we have a more traditional rose, we have the golden yellow, and we have some variations of the greens. So the first greens that I did, I used a blue-green as the base, and then I used kind of more of a yellow-green as my lightest color to kind of blend that out. For this one here, I'm doing almost the same color combination because my intention is to put those florals with this leaf. So that way they're sitting together really nicely. If for some reason you find that your lightest color has lightened up your darkest color too much, you can always go back in with your darkest color and add a little bit more shading to the underneath of those leaves. For this particular leaf, which honestly I think must be my favorite because every time I pull out the spring greenery set, I always end up using this particular set of leaves. I do not know why. I am drawn to it. But so I use the darkest color to follow along the veins that are embossed from the die, as well as my stem. And this is a darker version of a more true green. And then I used some more yellow greens to kind of pull that out, but they are more muted yellow greens. So we're still playing really nicely with the previous greens, but they're, again, not identical, just complementary. And then I did use the same color to blend them out as I did for the previous one. But because the 2 other colors are different, it has a totally different feel than the previous one. I struggled a lot with the magnolia leaves because they are a bit darker and nothing was dark enough. So ultimately, after trying all of the combinations that you see up there, because even I sometimes still have to play around with color, I decided to go with black as my darkest color. Then I went in with a G29 and then I went in with a YG67. The YG67 bleached out the 29 a bit too much, so I did have to go back in and go back over it, but I was much happier with the dimension achieved in those leaves. For the goldenrod pieces, I just used the same colors I used to shade the bird on the center of the magnolia. And now we are to the point where we are building our hidden hinge. So here's those 2 black pieces that are in the back that we cut. We're going to use our hinge to attach these together. So I just have some like rip and stick tape from Honeybee here. I'm going to put 1 on each side. This one I think is it's not 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch I think is what the width is. So I'm just going to put that on one side. I'm going to leave the tape backer on one side, peel it off the other side, and then I'm going to line these up together, make sure that they match up. And then just before that bottom, like decorative edge, I'm going to line up my hinge and then press that down. Again, I'm going to make sure everything is super lined up with my 2 pieces, and then I will fold it over, and this is going to give us our shaped base so that the whole card opens. But because we have all this beautiful detail in the front, I didn't want to interfere with the design, which is why I'm hiding the hinge. I'm also hiding all of the stuff that we're going to tuck into this pocket. That is, the die leaves a cut line in the top, like flap portion, and also for this door to be opened. So you would see anything that you tucked in there. This is going to hide all of the things that I want to tuck into that little pocket from the recipient. So I used again, I think it's like 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/16. Anyway, it'll be linked. They're foam strips, and I just use this. You'll notice I did not put anything at the top there in case I wanted to tuck something into the top section. But this is going to give me enough height that I will be able to comfortably tuck in my dies without any issue with the post box portion. So in order to attach that, I am now switching it up, and I am using a much thicker foam tape. This is the little foam circles, and I'm concentrating them in the bottom and in the center. There's a good 1/4 of an inch gap at the top, and I am leaving that there on purpose so that I can tuck all of my dies in and not run into my foam tape to where things don't fit. Because I like to be sure I'm sure when I'm putting things down, I do use liquid adhesive on the back of my foam to make sure if I need to pick it back up, I do have a little bit of wiggle room, because quite honestly, I don't trust myself. So here you can see that gap there. Everything will be able to be tucked in. We're going to add our little accents, the keyhole. There isn't a right or a wrong place to put it. I just put it where they had it in the layering guide. I also added the top decor piece and then the 2 little metal accents on the, what would be the hinged portion of the mailbox that would go up. I added some Hero Art wax in gold on top of that to add a little bit of shine and a little bit of texture. Because it's embossed, it does catch certain areas, which is also why I didn't take the time to add any shading to those little metallic accents, because there really wouldn't see it when I put the wax on. So now we are very quickly going to adhere any of the layers that we have to put together. I always find liquid adhesive and my tweezers to be my best friends when putting any of the lovely layers together. Also, if you have really tiny pieces parts, like the bird eyes or the bird beak, I also find the the little gem pickup tools. Mine is a crystal katana, but those are very helpful in picking up the teeny tiny itty bitty little pieces. So I was sick, which I feel like probably did back me up some, I wasn't being very productive. And I try to just remind myself everybody has sick days. That's why they're built into the, the public industry, or what is considered private industry. Public is government. But anyway, so I needed to take some sick days. It just was what it was. Unfortunately, that does mean that I am kind of up against it to get my stuff done before we go out of town. And while I am wildly apprehensive. There are no words. There are no words to tell you how anxious I am about it. I am choosing to concentrate on the good parts of it, that my husband is coming with me, so we will have a little weekend away, that I get to see a friend of mine who I haven't seen in ages, that I'm going to get to teach, which I love, which brings my heart such joy, and I'm going to get to meet you guys, which I also love. And so there are a lot of positives. The only negative is the travel anxiety. And so I can't let that one negative ruin all of my positives. And so I just try to, keep the good things in mind, try not to let the bad things take over my brain. And, we're just trying to work through it, doing what I can. So here, for the second card that I didn't know I was making, once I realized I was going to have a second card, I wanted to have a little bit of a gold border, but I was too cheap to waste my gold cardstock. So I made my own, because all I need is the border. So basically, I took my pigment ink pad and I rubbed it around the edges of a piece of white cardstock, and then I am dumping on my gold embossing powder, and then I will heat set this until it is smooth. This will give me a really great little border that matches all of my other embossing for like my sentiments, and didn't require me to use, a full 4¼ by 5½ sheet of metallic cardstock. That's just me. You do you. If I had more, if I had more of it showing, I probably would have went ahead and used the metallic cardstock, but I literally just needed like 1/8 of an inch border on all my sides. So here, this is what I wanted to show you. This was my original intention with all of the pieces that I built, was to have them coming out the top and then have kind of like a little corsage portion at the bottom. This will fit into a 5x7 envelope if you wanted to do it this way. However, I felt like it was a little bit too much and I wanted you to be able to see more of the mailbox. So that's how the second card was born, but I didn't want to do the same thing. So rather than cut another shaped card, I just used that post. This is also where I'm going to use my postcard because it did not fit with my bird and my other florals. And I'm going to create the look of a post box using a full A2 size card. So once I had everything all put together, this is a long video. I'm sorry I couldn't fit it all in, but you get the rough idea. This is all tucked in. You can't see it on the inside. The sentiments for this are so cute. One says handmade happiness. The other one said consider this a paper hug. There's another one that I really, really love. Hold on, let me see if I can find it so that I can tell you what it is, because I don't want to misquote it. It says there's a whole lot of love in this card. It says something like that. There's a whole lot of love packed in this card. I cannot remember exactly what it says, but it's adorable and I love it. So anyway, you saw me punch the little holes. The holes are going to act as my little nails around to create my post box look without actually having to cut anything. Now I used a hole punch for that. You could also use a small circle die. You could also use gems or pearls. Pearls would be great for that. But I already had the embossing that nobody was going to see, so this just seemed to make sense to me. So once I have the flowers all arranged and everything's glued to itself, I'm going to go ahead and glue this down to the card. And then for the post portion, I adhered that the same exact way with the foam dots to make room for all of the die cuts that are kind of tucked down in there. I think this one is really cute too. So if shape cards are not your thing, this is another way to achieve a very similar look. You could absolutely, tuck a little birdie in there. That would be totally adorable To finish them both off, I added a little bit of clear shimmer, of course, because I love the shimmer, and then I went in and did some white gel pen highlights for the bird's eye on the center of the magnolias, and then also all along the like pinkish purple flowers to just kind of put back in a highlight. And then that's it. That's both cards. That's our little shaped card with the hidden hinge and the bonus card that nobody knew we were making. So I hope that this inspires you to kind of mix up your products and see what you can create for different seasons. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.